Hi and welcome to the NTT20 podcast covering all things EFL with loads to talk about after a really busy week and weekend in the EFL. We're going to take a big old bite out of it. I'm Ali Maxwell, he's George Elek. Hi George.
Was that a pun?
It's not a pun, it's a precursor.
Fine. Oh, yes. There was a bite.
Don't give it... You're so unsubtle.
What? You said it was a precursor, and you said the word bite, so I think that suggests that there was a bite.
Wow, but it was subtle.
Okay.
We're going to take a bite out of it is more subtle than there was a bite.
Yeah, if only bites in football were as obvious as my ones rather than missed by officials. Am I right?
Amen. We've got loads to get through across all three leagues. We're going to start by talking about a League One team and by talking about Reading because it's been a terrible week for the club off the field. They lost on Saturday. That is barely relevant. It's certainly not important at the moment because whenever we've spoken about Reading so far this season, we've done so quite a lot of praise for their team and quite a lot of hope for what we hoped might happen off the field. Rob Couhig was the prospective new owner and he was going about as public as is possible to go as a prospective new owner, changing his profile picture to him standing outside a Reading badge, regularly turning up in Reading and meeting with fans in a local bar and or pub. But, George, as we sit here today, Rob Couhig is no longer Reading's preferred bidder. His period of exclusivity is over. The money that he loaned to the club while he was in the process has been paid back to him, and the club say they will pursue alternative options. We've talked about Dai Yong as a problem owner for many, many years. This is now the third potential takeover that's fallen through, and it is getting somehow even more desperate than it's ever felt.
Yeah, I mean, when you consider for Reading fans that they have been led down the garden path, and by who is up for debate. But, you know, when you see a prospective new owner, you know, he's not even hinting. He's effectively telling fans that it's happening and this is going to happen. And he's very happy to post and, you know, say he is going to be owner of Reading FC. So when that doesn't come to fruition, when a fan base are basically told that their troubles are going to be over and they can put a face to that, and then that to be taken away is going to hurt a lot. And it also means that you're a certain amount of time further down the line towards existential issues and crises. So it's desperate and it's very, very sad for Reading. There are a lot of unanswered questions right now amongst the fan base that, you know, we cannot help answer, but hopefully us asking them can help them get answered somewhere down the line, where there is no clarity at all as to why this purchase has fallen through. Rob Couhig is someone who has recently owned Wycombe Wanderers. I think we know that there was no issue in terms of EFL ratification. It seems very unlikely that there are any cold feet from Couhig himself, who was seemingly frustrated that he was unable to get the deal over the line in order to have any impact on their summer transfer window. And all we have is just a statement from Dai Yong, or on behalf of Dai Yong, just saying that the move is broken down, that he remains completely committed to selling the club. Is that true? Like, the evidence of this situation doesn't suggest it is, and that the loans have been repaid. Is that true? Because whilst we can assume that it is, it seems absolutely bizarre to me that someone like Dai Yong, who is seemingly unwilling to, well, either unwilling or unable to fund the day-to-day running of the club to an extent, to an acceptable extent, to enable the club to continue to progress, is suddenly able to refund the loans that were being used to fund the club. It seems paradoxical, if anything, that would be the case. So that is strange, and there are red flags around it to me. And you look at the quotes from Ruben Sellers. As you say, the game on Saturday doesn't really matter, like, in terms of where they are right now. But Ruben Sellers, who is the current Reading manager, who was appointed by whoever Young employs. I mean, Mark Bowen obviously has been in charge of the football side of things, but whoever made the decision, you know, he was employed under Young's ownership. And he says, we've been there before. The circle is repeating. The support to this team in terms of players and staff is non-existent from the club, and that's the reality. There will be a moment where we cannot cope, but it was not a point where we didn't win today. And that is the crux of this. You know, we have effectively absent, I mean, at best, absent owners in charge of Reading FC who are giving no support to the staff of the club. And there's going to be a time where this isn't good enough and this isn't going to be able to continue. So before we talk about the football on Saturday and before we mention anything, we aren't in a position. We see questions asked by fans as to why these things aren't given more column inches. And the reality, the fact is that football sells columns, sells newspapers, gets clicks on websites rather than stories about clubs in crises. But this is obviously by far and away the most important thing to talk about today, in the hope that any exposure can help it get fixed, because it's getting fairly desperate.
As if there was any further reason to love Michael Elise, a former Reading Academy player and now Bayern Munich superstar. It's that reportedly the money that Reading were paid after his move to Bayern Munich, the sort of sell-on clause money, is currently funding the club. According to a report in The Eye, that money is expected to last only until Christmas. As you can imagine, because there's such a lack of clarity on so many different levels, that the level of stress on the staff, but also on the fans, is just absolutely horrendous. Caroline Parker, who's one of the campaigners for Sell Before We Die, who are a group trying to raise awareness and trying to help in any way that they can save their club, she has given quotes this week to a number of media outlets, and they're just very difficult to read, really. We're stuck in this purgatory, she says, where you don't want to fund the club and pay the bills, but you don't want to sell. It's just a devastating situation, and it feels like a long, drawn-out, painful death. She said, if Reading is not a case for an independent regulator to be introduced in this country, then I don't know what is. The evidence is as clear as day that we need an independent football regulator, and we need the shadow regulator to look at Reading and help us. We need political heavyweights. Now, this has gone beyond what fans can achieve. We don't know what to do. It's that feeling of helplessness that clearly, basically at this point, everyone is feeling, that is just horrendous and so difficult.
Because you wonder where it ends. Like they had somebody ready to buy the football club with the means to do so, with the EFL's backing to do so, who had owned a football club in this country, in the EFL, in the same league as Reading, like months ago, successfully. So if not Rob Couhig, like who is it going to be? Is there why did this fall through? Were the goalposts moved in terms of what Dai Yong wanted for the club and for Bearwood, the training centre? Like, it just seems now, this is the problem, is when you have an owner who's lined up, ready, seemingly, to go through with the purchase, and that doesn't get done, then why would you have any faith in Dai Yong being able to agree to the sale of the club to any party?
And what we haven't touched upon, because I just find this lack of clarity so difficult that I don't think there's much point going into the realm of speculation when you're talking about something like this, but the fact that Yong is a Chinese national, the fact that Chinese nationals' influence and investment into English football had such a spike and now has had such a significant drop-off, and it's been explained well by the likes of Kieran Maguire, who do this stuff much better than we do. The lack of clarity around his own position in his own country and what sort of issues he may or may not have in that country and how they may or may not impact his ownership of Reading and maybe more specifically his ability to sell the club, that just adds to this murkiness and lack of clarity that's making this so horrendous for fans, for staff, for everyone. So we would like to call upon anyone, I guess, listening who could feasibly have an influence in whatever way they think to act upon that. If you think that there is a way you can influence this, whoever you are and whatever you do, whatever that influence may be, whether it is sharing the work of Sell Before We Die, that is still impactful, and that still will help a lot. And let's hope, again, go back to that word, that there will be another legitimate prospective owner that comes to the table soon and is allowed at the table and allowed to progress with that. In the football over the weekend, George, I think we're in that nice spot, sort of 6-7 games in now, where, you know, at this part of the season, we've talked a lot about some teams that have started the season well, quite a lot about some of the teams that haven't started the season well, and now you get to these sorts of weeks where actually a couple of new teams pop to the top of the conversation, a couple of teams stepping out maybe for the first time and saying, this is what we can be, this is what we might look like. And I think Norwich are probably the ones to discuss to kick off the Championship. They had by far their best day of the season, beating Watford 4-1 in the sunshine on Saturday.
Yeah, I watched this game, and and was really impressed with Norwich. Like, I've only seen Norwich once in full so far this season. That was on opening day, live in the flesh, and I couldn't have been less impressed. And I think this is quite an interesting game as to why forming opinions based on the first 2 or 3 games of a season can be, a fool's errand, basically, because Norwich started the season incredibly poorly. Watford started the season incredibly well, yet on all evidence that we saw on Saturday, one of these teams is much, much better than the other, and their form lines are going to reverse or have reversed. Norwich started the game really, really impressively and very, very well, with Josh Sargent missing a big opportunity, a good save from Backman at close range early on in the game after 2 minutes, but they didn't have to wait long at all until taking the lead with... It's one of those goals where it's like, it's brilliant from Callum Doyle. He does really well step out of defence and fire into the far corner, but I'm saying the keeper saves that 9 times out of 10. So, for Norwich fans, it's what a goal. For Watford fans, it's Backman, what are you doing? Yes.
Can I insert a stat?
Yeah.
Since keeping a clean sheet against Stoke on August the 17th, Watford have played 4 league games and conceded in the first 5 minutes of all of them.
Yeah, mad.
Second minute against Derby and Sheffield United, 4th minute against Coventry, and the 3rd minute against Norwich.
And if you're going... we've spoken about it on the pod before, but how a team performs at 0-0 is quite an interesting indicator as to their strength, because that is your performance level before the most disruptive thing to a game can happen, and that is a goal, where suddenly the game state completely changes and the balance of play can change alongside that. And I would say for Watford, albeit they've shown an impressive resilience at times to come back into games from being behind early on, the fact that they can keep conceding so early is a massive worry about the way they're set up for games early on. Norwich continue to be kind of the dominant force within the game after that, really good in possession, moving the ball very effectively, like relatively possession heavy, but not kind of stale possession, I wouldn't say, looking to get it forward wherever possible. And then suddenly the game turned on a completely flipped effectively with Rocco Vata getting a really good shot away that hit the woodwork, but just 10 seconds or so later, Andrews meeting a cross in a very weird way where it felt like all the Watford defenders and goalkeepers were all sliding in one direction, and Andrews almost kind of scuffed it just to the left of them as it kind of weaved its way around them. And for the second half of that first half, Watford then looked like the team likely to get the second goal with one of the most bizarre... It wasn't even a goal-mouth scramble, with the ball from Chekvetadze hitting the far post, and then Jebuston on the goal line managing to skew it wide. But it was one of those open goals on the goal line, which was somehow not that easy. And I kind of...
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of people, particularly Sheffield United fans, laughing at the Jebuston miss.
I just kind of thought it was the obvious place where he could connect and kick it. If that makes...
I just think it all happens in such close proximity that the ball is a bit too far behind him for him to be able to react quick enough to wrap his foot back around it to divert it towards the goal.
And the ball moving too fast for him to do that as well, I would say. So yeah, I'm giving him...
Justice for Jebbo.
It clearly didn't look great. Like, I'm not... But I don't think it was quite as simple as it looked on first viewing, but I still don't really understand how it didn't go in. And what was annoying is that the replays...
If anyone ever makes it onto an NTT20 21 under 21 list, we will be batting
We've got your
for
back.
you forever.
But what was also annoying about it is because they kept showing, both live and in the highlights I watched, because they had the goal line technology, they kept showing that and not the miss. And I was like, I want to see what happens after
They
that.
ran that into the highlights as well. I was like, lads, this is a waste of time.
Yeah, I mean,
no one thinks that's gone in.
It didn't nearly go in.
No.
And then even on comms, and not to dig anyone out, but they went, the finest of margins. I was like, nope, none of the ball is over the line there. It's all basically this side of the line.
Some margins.
And then one of my favourite goals of the weekend, I would say, was from Borja Sainz just before the whistle was blown for half-time, after, as I say, a period where Watford had been better. A brilliant ball over the top from Kenny McLean, and just such an exquisite first touch from Sainz, where it's almost one of those where he brings it down on the tip of his foot on the full sprint perfectly into his path, and then a finish that would look way better second time round, seeing it from behind, where he manages to kind of bend it in the near post around Backman. And then the second half was just complete domination, basically, from Norwich, who were by far the better side. And I think we got a real insight there as to what they can be under the new manager, Marcelino Núñez, with a brilliant finish from a really well worked goal, and then Chris Ene with his first goal very late on to finish it off. And that was a just reward for what was a really impressive display, and the kind of display I think that for Norwich now, and in fairness to Norwich fans, I think to a man, in those concerning early displays, they were like, it's early days, we can see some ideas as to what we're trying to do, and slowly we're starting to see the fruits of that labour, because they look really good here.
Yeah. Chakvetadze put in one of the most exciting displays I can remember in a 4-1 defeat.
Yeah.
And without ending up with any sort of goals or assists necessarily to show for it. But even the Norwich fans who I saw over the weekend talking about the game, all of them pointing out how impressed they were with Chakvetadze. Just such a fun player to watch. But, he's not just fun. He's not all frills. He is creating chances. He's beating players. He's breaking down defences. And it's only a matter of time, I think, before the goal contributions start to come. Pretty worried about Watford defensively, I must say. This was a good performance from Norwich, but they were allowed a lot of space to do their nice passing and movement. I think for FOTMob Corner this week, I'm going to just introduce the listeners, more so the neutrals than the Norwich fans, to the new Norwich, because it's been 2 wins, 2 draws, 2 defeats to start the season. And on what was their best day of the season so far, I think it's worth telling you a bit more about who they are and what they are. FOTMob is the #1 football app for live scores, but also has a wealth of stats and information, including XG data for the Championship, League 1 and League 2. Download it using the link in the show notes. For Norwich, it's a new manager, it's a new tactical system, and it's half of a new team. And this was their best performance so far, where they really clicked for the first time. If you look at the lineup, I say half a new team, and that's almost exactly split down the middle, because you've got the old guard still there from last season. You've got Josh Sargent up front, who, for me, is the best all-round striker in the Championship. There are individual things that I think others might be better at, but I boil it down to this. If I was starting a new Championship team to play this season and I was able to pick a number 9 to get me going from any team, like an expansion draft, I would choose Josh Sargent to play up front for my team this season. Sainz, who you mentioned, 0.57 XG plus XA per 90. Good numbers to start the season. A little behind Sargent, but still looking dangerous with 3 goals already, and leads the team for successful dribbles per 90. Nunez has always been a soft spot for me, hasn't he? And, I like to think...
You went early with him?
Yeah, I went too early, it turned out. I should have gone for Gavi Sara.
Yeah.
I went for Marcelinho instead. But maybe he can step out now that Sara is gone. He certainly looks like he's having a bit more of an impact as a creative passer in the final third this season. Still taking a lot of shots from range. In this instance, got inside the box and finished well. And I'd like to see him, gain a bit of new instruction from that and actually get a little bit higher up the pitch before he shoots from range. And then we've got Kenny McLean, who's been there for so long, Shane Duffy and Angus Gunn as well. But what about the new boys? Jose Cordoba made his first league start for Norwich, bought from Levski Sofia in the summer, the Panamanian international centre-back. And still young too. It was his first start, and it was a lovely start. Left-footed, playing left centre-back with Doyle next to him on his left and Duffy on his right. Lots of short passing in this game. He didn't show huge ambitious with big switches and some long passing range, but he did show a few nice moments where he carried it forward when needed. Defensively, I noticed he's not necessarily the tallest, but he seems to have really good upper body strength, and he's got that aggressiveness, that bravery to throw himself into duels, and he looks to enjoy defending, which seems like an obvious thing to want, but isn't always the case for the modern day centre-back. Because they play quite a high line, they're going to have trouble in defensive transition. His recovery defending was important in this game. Had a few different scenarios with Jebison and Chakvetadze running outside of him into space, and he dealt with them pretty well. I did notice that there were a few of those battles where he went in very physically, and he was on the borderline of clumsy. And I wonder if maybe with stricter referees, there's potential for Cordoba to be giving away a few free kicks. And because of the nature of the high line, maybe the odd red card. I'm going to get in front of that in case it happens. I look smart. Callum Doyle next to him. Look, he needs no real introduction. He's coming up to 100 Championship starts already, and he's only 20. I saw George Massey tweeted that his 8.9 FOTMob rating is the highest a defender has received in the Championship this season. He's tucking in and being heavily involved in build-up, but he's also somehow getting involved in the final third as well, so he's offering them a hell of a lot in all phases. Kellen Fisher on the right-back, where Doyle is a Manchester City loney wonderkid starlet. Kellen Fisher is a 20-year-old playing the other side at right back. They signed him from Bromley last summer, and he looks excellent, really composed on the ball, playing a fairly conservative right back role, but doing so really nicely. And then in front of him on the right wing, Ante Cernats, who is kind of an interesting one. They spent a lot of money on Senats from the Ekstraklasa, the Polish top flight, where he scored 9 goals last season. It was a decent investment in a player from that division, one of its highest ever exports, I think, or most expensive ever exports. He hasn't necessarily found his stride in front of goal yet. We're expecting him to be left footer off the right that cuts inside and shoots a lot. He hasn't necessarily had too much joy on that front, but what I did notice, and you can see it in the stats already, is that because he's quite tall and quite strong, he's got a good leap on him, Norwich are able to use him as a nice outlet when they need to clear the ball long, when they need to get rid. And it's kind of an underrated tactical thing, having a really good aerial dueler on the wing for you, because when you clear the ball long, instead of going down the middle to the striker, it's always hard for them to win headers against centre-backs from a long straight ball, and if they lose them, the ball's getting headed straight back towards your defensive line. Actually, if you go wide, there's a lot less risk in terms of losing the ball, but I even think if you've got someone who can jump and win those headers, the angles that you have for them to work with are probably a little more friendly than they are when you go down the middle.
And a fullback probably less likely to be aerially dominant too.
There you go. So I like this for an option for Norwich, for a team playing short from goal kicks to have that kind of outball. Senats with an interesting profile. And maybe the most interesting of all is Oscar Schwartau, 18-year-old from Bromby, making just his second league start in a sort of left central midfield number 8 role. He's really tall. 18-year-old stands out for his height already, but he's not like awkward and gangly. He's got really nice feet. He dribbled past a few players with some nice quick movement. He had one great interception where he carried the ball forward, jinked inside a man, got a shot off that was well saved. The Norwich fans very excited about what Schwartau could be, because I think he has and can play in all sorts of positions and roles in kind of attacking midfield. So there are some of the new names for new Norwich. Obviously in the dugout is Johannes Hoftorup, and the Norwich fans seem to want to call the style Hofball.
Not hoofball.
Certainly not hoofball. Exciting.
Hofball, not hoofball. There's your next Talk Norwich City bit of merch.
I'm excited to see more of this. It's been a mixed start, as you say. I think due to the style of play and the profile of the players that I've just talked about, there is likely to be some high variance, I think, in their performances and in their results over the next few months. But while this might not be the same conclusion you had with West Brom last week, which was this is a very, very serious potential title challenger, I don't necessarily think I'm seeing that yet with Norwich, but I loved watching them play on Saturday, and I'd like to see more of that, please. So with thanks to FOTMob for the background on all the players for Norwich, but also every player in the EFL has their own profile with their background, their career, but also stats as well. I think that's been an interesting little FOTMob Corner segment. So do download the app using the link in the show notes and dive in. On Friday night, newest manager in the league, Narcis Pelach. Jonathan Walters sacked Steven Schumacher and went and got a new Catalan for the Stoke fans to fall in love with. He spoke to Bojan. He spoke to Mark Muniesa, and they said, yes, Narcis, go to Stoke. This is the place for you. But he didn't win his first game in charge. They lost 3-1 at home to Hull. It was, by contrast, the first win for Hull's manager, Tim Walter, George.
Yeah, and you feel like this was a bigger game for Tim Walter than it was for Narcis Pelach. Also, annoyingly...
Poor bloke, that's his first ever game as a senior manager, and you're saying
but interestingly,
more important for someone else.
You say that as a senior manager, because in the press release when he was appointed, which I never really followed up and looked up, John Walters was like, yeah, he was a head coach when he was 25, and he knew he always wanted to come back to it.
Yeah, in some of the lower leagues in España.
So that's... He's been manager.
Figueres.
How dare you say it's his first ever game in charge?
Peralada.
Yeah, what are you saying about them?
Sorry, Narcis.
What's also annoying is that I said on this very show last week that I was going to only call him Chicho, and since then I've seen not a single person call him that again. It feels like he has decided that, you know, as a first team coach, Chicho's fine, but like now he's the big dog. He wants to be Pelach.
Yeah, I think we know from experience that managers don't love any sort of nickname or anything like that might undermine their authority. Like, for example, when a manager comes up with a brilliant new tactic and it gets dubbed the reverse mullet, I'm not sure they always love that sort of slightly jokey, you know, this is very serious for them.
Do you think there's any chance in the next couple of years, as you head into like adulthood, that you're going to start being like, I'm now Alexander? Interesting.
Going full name on it.
Yeah.
Possibly. Depends how badly things go as Ali.
Yeah, fair enough. Where were we? Yeah, I mean, this feels like a bigger win for Walter, just because he had taken charge of a summer and had promised quite a lot and was yet to really deliver. And for him to get his first win at this point was significant, I think, for Stoke. As much as the new boss would have loved to have got underway with 3 points, realistically, I don't think you can blame him too much for what was a relatively poor display, really. That the first half, there wasn't a great deal between the two sides. It was a goal from a corner that led to Stoke being ahead. And Hull, as you probably would have imagined before the game, there goes the pen.
Sorry.
Hull dominated possession without creating loads with it. But in the second half, they were much better. With Casey Palmer missing a penalty but nodding home the rebound. And then Regan Slater following that up not long later with a decent goal before Wilmot made it a brace, albeit one in his own net and one in the right net. It was a good second half display from Hull. It was like much... I think they... Even though the results hadn't necessarily improved, I do think kind of week on week we've seen, certainly from a kind of process point of view, we've seen better patterns of play. We've seen more ball dominance, which is something that Walter promised. And we're now starting to see a little bit more attacking output. They will have tougher games for sure. I think for Stoke now, we need to see what Narkis Pelak is going to be all about. We don't know at the moment. He obviously speaks a very good game. He talks well. I think he's won the Stoke fans over early on.
That was a fabulous initial interview.
He's won you over as well.
He did win me over. I kind of have the devil and the angel on my shoulder. When I see a new manager interview, I'm happy to, on the one hand, buy into what they're saying and enjoy the feeling that I think a lot of fans feel of being lifted up and inspired. And Pelak did a good job at that. I have the sort of devil on my shoulder, the cynic in me, that's like, this guy has been practicing that speech in his mirror for the last 5 years.
He gave it at 25.
So, I mean, but, George, I don't want to be a cynic. I want to be a dreamer. And I'm happy to dream with the Stoke fans that Chicho is going to do the business for them. I thought on the night the most important name was Miller, Liam Miller, who came on for Hull. I would like to see him starting all of Hull's games because maybe he's just a highlights player, but this was a live on Sky game and he was good in all of it. But you know what I mean? To me, he just constantly looks to be at the heart of most attacks when he's on the pitch.
I think he's a proper one where if he plays 40 games a season, in 10 he'll be the best player on the pitch, and in the other 30 you won't even know he's there.
Well, interesting. Well, I knew he was there, and so did the bloody Hull Stoke defenders.
Yeah,
couldn't handle him. He was involved in the first goal in the lead up to the penalty. I think he got the assist for Slater as well, having intercepted a pass from Wilmot. Fantastic performance from Miller. And Coventry lost 2-1 at home to Swansea. Swans going 2 up here in the first half. Goals from 2 academy graduates. Liam Cullen, who I must say is developing a reputation, certainly in my house, as a real sniffer. The truffle pig Shane Lavery has unfortunately basically lost that nickname over the last few years.
He's no longer truffling.
Well, he's a truffle pig with terrible hamstrings, sadly, and that's slightly undermined his ability to sniff.
Do pigs have hamstrings?
I think Cullen. He's...
Surely not.
Does a swan have a hamstring? Because if not, Cullen could be fine here. He just scores these goals where it reminds me a bit of some of the goals Michael Cheek has scored in League 2 this season, where it's just the ball's just flying across the penalty box and no one seems to know what's happening apart from Cullen. And he knows where it's going to drop and he's just going to bundle it in. So it's a good trait for him to have. And then Cooper with the second goal finding the bottom corner very, very nicely. And Swansea holding out in the end for a 2-1 win. Rudoni scoring 1 from range. But otherwise, they did a pretty good job of seeing out this early lead at Coventry. You were very impressed, or have been very impressed, with your friend of mine, Lawrence Vigouroux in nets for Swansea.
Yeah, I think we need to give Viggs a bit of credit because he's 30 years old now, and it's been quite a strange career to finally get to being a championship number one, where he has been, he's been at Swindon for a while after leaving Liverpool. He then had a spell abroad. He was an Orient keeper, obviously, with to a pretty good degree in League Two. And then he went to Burnley to basically be a sub-keeper who wasn't really
third, I
seeing
think.
the play.
Yeah, third choice.
And it was an interesting bit of recruitment from Swansea to go and bring him in. I mean, obviously we know that he's someone who is very, very good with the ball at his feet, and very confident, and a good shot stopper too, and also an Oxford legend. Let's remember that too. But he is, it was I guess a bit of a leap of faith to go out and get someone who hadn't played any first team football for a year,
and he'd never played in the Championship.
Well, that's my point. He's finally here. He's finally arrived via his international career with Chile as well, which I think he's yet to make a cap for them, but still has a desire to play for them, having been called up back in 2018. And he's been really good. There was one moment in this game where he came out and kind of flapped at one, but then made a very good recovery save afterwards. And if you look at on FotMob, if you look at the goals prevented tab, so the amount of goals that goalkeeper has basically prevented based on the expected goals on target, Vigouroux sits second, having conceded 4 goals from a 6.5 expected XGOT. A consistent. He's faced 23 shots this season and only conceded 3. Again, this isn't FotMob Corner, but if you do look at the app, you can go onto the season shot map and you can see the dispersion of those shots on target. And a lot are in the corner. He's doing incredibly well. He's always been someone who's done that. His shot stopping has been impressive. So just a bit of a shout out, I guess, for a good bit of recruitment and a sign that, investing in League One and League Two quality doesn't have to come with outfield players in their early 20s. It can also come in terms of a relegated Premier League side's third choice keeper.
For Cov, this is the extension of a frustrating start to the Championship season, and there's mitigating circumstances. There's excuses for it, for sure. They played Spurs and they did brilliantly in midweek, losing late. And it's not hard to imagine that was quite an energy-sapping game, and that the next game being a home game against Swansea with a little less of a vibe around the place might not help with dynamism and might help or contribute to a sluggish start. The excuses are getting a little bit tiring, I think, themselves, ironically, for Coventry fans, because since beating Leeds on the 6th of April, Cov have only won 1 Championship game in 12, George, and they've lost 8 of them. That's obviously straddling the 2 seasons, and it's not ideal. And what I'm struck by is the fact that they've got so many attacking players now. It's one of the reasons why we were so excited about them pre-season. They've got Sims and Wright, obviously, but they've also got this lad Bassett, who looks quite lively. They've got Thomas Asante playing, Mason Clark, Sakamoto. Those are 6 interesting attacking players for their 3 slots. They've got others like Van Evek and Rodoni who contribute to a good attacking team as well. It's just not quite working at the moment. I still think they'll be okay, and I think it's important to not worry about league position right now and remember that a 6-point gap between the playoffs after not many games is very, very little in reality. Although 19th in the league table sounds a bit more dramatic, but expectations were raised this season, and so I'm just within myself, I'm kind of treating them a little bit more harshly this season, I think. I think I'd like to see some better results for Coventry over the next few weeks. And Cardiff lost 2-0 at home to Leeds. They weren't helped, and nor was their manager, Erol Bulut, their now former manager, when Joel Bagan, the left-back, was sent off for fouling Willie Gnonto when through on goal.
What do you reckon?
Red?
Yeah, I think so too.
Red. And shout out Gnonto for being fouled, hitting the deck, getting up again, and then missing his 1-on-1, or rather having it saved. And shout out to the ref for playing the advantage and then pulling it back and sending off Bagan. I accept it. It looked a bit weird, didn't it? But the whole circumstance was a bit unusual. I think it was the right decision.
Yeah, there's one replay where it makes it very, very clear that there just isn't a covering defender. There's no one anywhere near him anyway. Not that's necessarily relevant because he is in front of the defender and going to get a shot away. So, yes, I agree.
And it was Gnonto's mate, Largi Ramazani, who introduced himself to us and to the Leeds faithful with a lovely bit of speed in behind, a lovely little finish into the corner 1-on-1, and then a delightful flip in celebration.
It's a very similar goal to the one I just spoke about, Saints for Norwich.
It was, very similar finishes. Leeds getting a second eventually after quite a lot of poor finishing. Joel Perreault just spanking one into the top corner. The former Swan adding insult to injury for Cardiff. From a Leeds point of view, a routine win really. They have faced the fewest shots in the league, the second fewest shots on target. They have the lowest XG against. That Leeds unit defensively is still as good as it was last season, and that should give them the foundation to challenge again at the top, despite the fact that they've had some poor results to start the season. I think we're both still feeling pretty bullish about them being quite good. And Bulut fired. George, we spoke about this on a big old video on the YouTube channel last week, so no need to go into too much depth, but I think as a general overview, good performances early on in the season. The first 2 or 3 games were not reflecting the results. Since then, confidence has gone. Performances have been pretty poor, and I broke down in detail while I hadn't seen many redeeming features of Bulut's tenure, to be honest, other than some big derby wins early last season. But I think it's also fair to say neither of us have a huge amount of faith in the hierarchy, whose job it is to find a replacement.
For sure, yeah. I mean, that's my biggest concern, is that if Erol Bulut is replaced by someone else who hasn't really shown themselves to be an adequate championship manager, someone who hasn't got any tangible success in recent seasons, then I don't see why things would be any different. I think there could be some complacency about the perceived strength of the squad. I'm not convinced that if you you replace Erol Bulut with someone who is an average championship manager, they're suddenly going to get a much better tune out of them. I think there's a fair chance that Cardiff are going to find themselves in a relegation battle unless they hire someone who is very, very good. So we'll see what happens now. But as we mentioned in that video, when you look through Cardiff's hires under Vincent Tan, there doesn't seem to be much reason to believe they're going to suddenly get it right. I wouldn't say. So, and also I think it's a hard sell now, and that's nothing to do with Cardiff City as a football club, but it's a hard sell to say to an up-and-coming manager or someone, come here and develop your career here, because no one's really been able to do that before, and you're coming into a club who have 1 point after 6 games and are staring down already in the end of September down a really long, hard season.
Staring down the barrel.
Staring down the bullet.
Couple of home wins to whiz through now. Sunderland beating Boro in the big one. Very much not a derby, but a match between teams that have some geographical proximity and who are both gunning for promotion this season. Won by the beautiful back heel of Christopher Rigg. Yeah,
I mean, a very inventive finish. As he said afterwards, when he was asked why he tried it, he was like, I couldn't score any other way. I had to do that.
What I would say is,
yeah,
the fact that that's his weaker foot makes that the difficulty of that back heel go from like a 3 out of 10
to
I'm
like
not, an 8 out of 10.
Come on.
You weren't saying that.
Don't make it sound as if I'm saying it was a rubbish finish, right? I do not need Sunderland fans in my mentions this week.
We're both right-footed.
Yeah.
We, who have famously never played the game, never kicked a ball in our life, we could both have scored that exact, if we were in that exact position on that side. But if we tried to do that with our left feet, like back heels are much easier on your stronger foot, and I think that's worth pointing out. That was very impressive.
Definitely. No, I agree. And it's just another big moment in what is going to be a very good long career, hopefully in a Sunderland shirt for Chris Rigg. I thought Patrick Roberts was again really impressive here. He has started the season so well. It feels like he's not flattered to deceive would be harsh, but I think he has had moments in a Sunderland shirt where he's been very good. But unlike, for example, Jack Clarke, who kind of carried the team on his shoulders from an attacking point of view for a long time, it feels like Roberts has kind of stepped up in Clarke's absence a fair bit, and he was a constant threat here. Mundell nearly scored yet another, this time from a direct free kick that rattled the woodwork. Lath had a decent opportunity to score for Boro, but
and Conway as well.
Conway,
bar.
Heading onto the bar before the first goal. It was a funny game of few chances, but kind of big chances when they occurred. For Boro kind of the side at the moment in the Championship where the performances look okay, the underlying numbers look okay, yet the points tally doesn't look particularly impressive right now. And it was kind of similar for the most part for them last season. And it does, I don't know, it kind of feels to me a little bit like Michael Carrick has still got credit on the bank for a run of form that was now like a long time ago. So, I'm sure things will improve fairly soon. I think the performances are good enough to, but this was an opportunity for them to go to a side who've started the season very well in terms of a points tally. You've just come off the back of a damaging defeat, and stake a claim, and yet they failed to do that.
Yeah, Dex, who's on NTT20 squad, big Boro fan, and someone who I admire for generally being able to see the positives or understand the process even in poor runs of form. And obviously Boro have had some quite high profile poor runs of form early on in seasons, in particular in the last couple of years. I think that the thing that Dex said this weekend, which I found most interesting in breaking this down, was it feels like Carrick is basically still trying to recreate the exact same formation and style that underpinned the really strong end to the season in 22-23, but without the right pegs in the right holes. In that system, which is 4-2-3-1 on paper, but essentially had Ryan Giles, the left back, in the attacking line, which allowed McGree to pick up really awkward little pockets kind of tucked in off the left. They don't have a Ryan Giles. They have three left backs, none of whom appear to be anything like him in terms of what they can do in the final third, or even their proclivity of getting that high up the pitch. And so you can't just recreate that team because you don't have the same players in which to do so. They had Cameron Archer and Chiba Akpom playing in the 9 and the 10 position. Like, it's I'd love to see Carrick try something new and for it to make a lot of sense and suddenly click into place with these players, because I'm starting to lose a little bit of faith, and I've had a lot in their ability to be as good as they were in that period with this set of players playing this certain way. But once again, going back to Sunderland, it's their defensive shape and discipline that is standing out as much as it is, all the things that you rightly point out with Patrick Roberts' mazy dribbles and Chris Rigg's moments of brilliance. They're the only team in the EFL to have scored first in every league game this season. And when you match that with defensive shape and discipline and defensive zeal and desire to see those tight games out, you're going to get a team that accumulates points very quickly, and that's what we've got here, and it's very exciting. Sheffield United are doing similar. They are one of only 4 teams still unbeaten in the EFL. They beat Derby 1-0. The most notable player in this game for me was not Gus Harmer, despite the fact he scored a beautiful free kick inside the near post, but just kissing the inside of the post, the sort of shot that's very, very difficult to save. And that's just as well, because I think that was the only way they were going to get past the scrum cap wearing Zetterstrom in Derby's goal, who looks unbelievable. I mean, you can get this with goalkeepers where they have a stretch of games where they seem to be saving everything, and generally at this level it doesn't last forever, but wow, this kid looks good. He made some fantastic saves and kept the score down, basically. It's not that Sheffield United sliced through Derby at will. Derby are a stubborn defensive team, but Derby didn't offer very much at the other end. They hit the post in the first half hour through Mendes Lang.
That was their only shot in open play.
Yeah, didn't have another shot after the 28th minute, I think it was. So, Harmer's goal, the moment of quality that Blades needed to kind of unlock this stubborn Derby defence. I did note that Sousa was captain here with Arblaster out with an ankle injury, which is some renaissance given the general sort of approval rating of Sousa upon relegation. And with Arblaster out, they replaced their 20-year-old midfielder with another one. Saidi Peck started and looked great, energetic, got amongst it, pecking at the heels of the Derby midfielders, filled Arblaster's shoes really, really nicely. We got West Brom. They're still marching on, beating Argyle 1-0, and with apologies to most listeners, but this is specifically for fans of like early 2000s internet meme culture. Maja, 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 mushroom, mushroom, maja, 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 snake. Because he scored more goals than anyone else in the EFL now, and he won the game for West Brom. He had 3 big chances and took one of them.
Did I fall asleep there? That was weird.
Mushroom. Yeah, I thought Argyle gave a pretty good account of themselves here. Definitely played with, a bit more character than maybe people are giving them credit for, but they are really struggling to keep the opposition at bay when they're on their travels, when they're on their pilgrimages, and that could be an issue for them.
Yeah, I mean, no denying that defensively they don't look great, but I do, listening to Wayne Rooney's interview after the game, I kind of agree with him, where he, with a smirk on his face, he was like, look, everyone's talking about us, but they don't really, to paraphrase, they don't really get us. He was like, we feel like we're doing right things. Fans, we can feel it behind us. The fans are supporting me. Like, we're pretty happy with how things are going. And a 1-0 defeat at Albion is obviously not a great result, but like West Bromwich Albion in my mind have been, alongside Leeds, Sunderland, probably the best 3 teams in the league so far. So it's by no means a disgrace. The Magic goal itself was well worked down the right hand side. They went close as well with Alex Mowat nearly following up his 2 goals against who did they? Pompey. Last time out with a strike here. Morgan Whittaker had a decent opportunity, or a couple of decent opportunities for Argyle. But yeah, I mean, even though Argyle, the XG numbers in terms of the quality of the chances they created might not be great, but they mustered 17 shots and 4 on target against a baggy side who we know are very resolute and very good out of possession, and Carlos Corberán sides generally don't give up many shots. So, I mean, this was I would say, an awkward game for Corberán because of their good start and because of the perception of Argyle, and because they were at home. They were expected to win this, and they did, and they won it, and they deserved to win it. But I do kind of think that Argyle are the team at the moment where they were so bad to start the season in that opening game. But there are definitely some signs, I would say, in the last couple of weeks that they might surprise a few people if people keep writing them off.
Bristol City 2, Oxford United 1. George Elek told me last week that sales of inflatable snakes were through the roof in the Oxfordshire area, but it was Liam Manning's Robins that slithered to victory.
I got one tweet asking if Oxford fans would be able to get a refund for the inflatable snakes, and I was like, I don't think it was bought on the prerequisite that it wasn't like a guarantee we were going to win.
That would be in such bad faith, wouldn't it, if you went back to the party shop
I know.
And said, "Oh, sorry, we lost, so I want my money back."
Also, what about the home game?
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point. Multi-use.
Exactly.
Multi-use.
Yeah, funny game this, where I think Bristol City have better players than Oxford, and I think as an Oxford fan, you come away from this game thinking 2 things: Bristol City probably deserve to win it, and how do we not come away with anything from that game?
Yes.
Because even though Bristol City were the dominant force early on in the game, with Anis Mehmeti being, in particular, a real threat and forcing a couple of saves out of Jamie Cumming, Oxford went ahead through a very good run through the middle from Siriki Dembele, who has made like a phenomenal start to his Oxford career. He is really on one, it feels like, but a deflected through ball that went through to Rodriguez, so some fortune in the goal.
Then had another little jink,
but not
and
long
hit
after
the bar.
that. Yeah, then he hit the bar from about 25 yards. It's what's annoying me is I remember when we had him in when we covered him in Sky, and I was like, I just don't think he's a winger. Like, I think he's so much better carrying the ball through the middle of the park. It's where he's most dangerous. And again, like watching him play for me now, I'm like, yeah, like off the left, fine, I get it. But as soon as he drifts inside and gets on the ball in the final third, like he's so destructive with the ball. So nearly could have gone 2-0 up then. And then in the second half, Mark Harris just had one of those moments. And it's funny because Mark Harris came to Oxford under Liam Manning, and apart from one amazing display away at Derby, really struggled in front of goal. And then when Manning left and Des Buckingham came in, suddenly Harris's finishing went through the roof. And suddenly, Liam Manning on the touchline, ball squared Sparky 3 yards out, and he just somehow manages to kind of poke it wide of the post. I think he just gets nervous in front of Manning. He's got like an issue.
When you score 4 goals in your first 7 shots of the season, the finishing gods always make note of that, and they'll always have something waiting for you. I guess he's like reversed it in one go. I always say, George, that as humans, let alone footballers, it's not making a mistake that defines you, because Lord knows we all make them.
Yeah.
It's how you respond to it. He responded to it by giving away a penalty.
Yeah. Well, so before that, Sinclair Armstrong scored a really well taken goal that was, as I say, on the balance of play, like definitely deserved from Bristol City, who were very good. Oxford, as I kind of thought they would, sat off quite a lot from Bristol City to attack and transition, as they did with the Harris opportunity that was missed, as they did for the goal. But Bristol City weren't the kind of blunt attacking threat that they often can be under Manning against a low block, where they were able to create a fair few chances. And when the goal came, it was deserved, although Jamie Cumming will probably feel a bit frustrated that he kind of let it through his legs. But then Harris gave away a penalty, and Harris gave away a penalty that came because Dane Scarlett came on and Harris moved out to the right-hand side, which is why he was making the recovery run. I personally don't think it was a penalty. I'm also not really angry about the fact it was given. I think it's fairly obvious that Harris does make contact with the ball, especially given the way the ball rolls after the tackle is made. I also think it's just not a tackle that you want to be making. I don't think when you are running full pelt towards your own goal, you want to run into an attacker and try and take the ball off them that way, because you are, if he manages to nick the ball away from you, you're basically always going to give away a penalty. And it was dispatched impressively by Nahki Wells. Then Oxford couldn't really find their way back into the game. So, from an Oxford perspective, that's 3 away games this season against 3 sides who have started the season okay, in Bristol City, Blackburn, Coventry, the one who haven't started too well. But 3 teams who will all still now expect to be in the top half, and they've lost all by a solitary goal. For Bristol City, I think this is important, where the perception seemed to be that Manning may well get sacked if they lost this game, which I think is relatively harsh. But at the same time, I know a lot of Bristol City fans just aren't having him and don't really want him to be their manager. However, I do think the atmosphere within this game, what it meant for Manning, and therefore the Bristol City fans kind of revelling in that, and there were big scenes after the whistle where Manning did his whole kind of fist pumps to the crowd thing. Like maybe maybe
repair some
yeah,
repairs.
I think basically because it almost felt like a bit of a derby was born on Saturday. Probably not from Bristol City towards Oxford, but just the Oxford Manning. I think so long as Manning is there, this will be a game that will mean something to Oxford. And I think because of that, Bristol City probably enjoyed it more than they would just a regulation home win against a newly promoted side. And maybe that will repair some of the damage that's been done between the relationship between Bristol City and Manning. It's interesting to note as well.
They've got Swansea next Sunday.
Yeah.
Then Wednesday at home, and then Cardiff at home. So they had their newest derby on Saturday, which they won. Then they've got 2 quite big ones coming
As I
up.
say, just before I get loads of Bristol City fans being like, maybe we couldn't care less about you, I'm not suggesting for a second that now Bristol City fans are putting a ring around that game in the book. I just think it'll be a spicy one.
Rent-free in your head, tears, etc., etc. Yeah. I thought a big moment here was for Bristol City, the halftime substitution of Joe Williams off, Yu Hirakawa on.
He's good.
Hirakawa looking really fun, as we hoped he would. We liked the signing from what we could find out about him and what we were told about him over the summer. Picked up an injury, didn't he? But does look like the sort of quality attacking player that he was advertised as having been. And I just think that Joe Williams has been quite poor in recent weeks. When you play in his position at the base of midfield in a team that is trying to improve its build-up, trying to improve its ability to play through the thirds, if you're not offering much quality on the ball, or at least looking after it, and he's had a few moments where that's definitely not been the case, or this kind of defensive protection needed in that role, it can be quite damaging for the team, I'm afraid. So, him coming off meant that Bird and Knight played in the double pivot. The former Derby boys. It allowed Scott Twine to move inside and play in a number 10 role rather than tucked off the left, which is where I think he's best. On paper, it's pretty spicy going with Knight and Bird and 4 in front of them, but that was what was necessary to come back and win that game, which they did do. Birmingham also won 2-1 at home to Portsmouth. This one was also from behind because Pompey put in a brilliant first half performance away at Burnley. They had the lead as well. Callum Lang scoring. They'd hit the post through a set-piece header from Ogilvie, and out of possession they were playing fantastically well. Almost felt like there was a bit of a gravitational pull basically towards their goal in the second half, and it led to 2 goals. Sarmiento scoring, sort of curling one in, having shimmied in and done about 4 dummy shots, and then curling one into the corner from the left-hand side of the box. And then Josh Brownhill deep into injury time with a goal that just looks weird because he doesn't hit it with any power. It goes through a pair of legs or 2, and Norris just watches it while he sort of walks across his line.
I would like to say that I think Norris is in no way to blame for this at all.
Okay.
And I can't understand why. But he's so far away from it. I guess maybe his starting position could be. But that is a goal where I don't understand the physics of that goal. I don't understand if that goal is possible, why it doesn't happen more often? Because that ball has crawled into the corner.
Crawled it. Yeah. Big moment for Burnley, big win for Burnley. They continue to pick up wins without necessarily convincing in terms of a performance. I guess it helps when you have someone like Sarmiento coming off the bench, because as Ipswich found in big moments last season, he's a hell of a player to have coming off the bench. The sort of player that needs to start proving himself as a starter at this level, but is a hell of an option for them. For Portsmouth, it's just so clear to me, even as they keep failing to win their first game of the season, that this isn't one of those bad runs where a manager has lost his grip on the team and they don't know how to play. Like, they are having spells in games, halves, sometimes longer, where they are more than competitive. Sometimes they're the better side, even against, as we've mentioned a few times, the incredibly difficult fixture list that they've had. So I was pleased to see John Mousinho and Rich Hughes, the sporting director, given new contracts. A show of commitment and confidence from the club that I think is merited, and I'm really pleased to see that, as far as I can see as well, the fan base are sticking with it and understanding of the situation, because I think what they achieved last season, the more it fades into the rearview mirror, the more people might slightly take for granted what they did last season. But that was a hell of a job from all involved, and I think merits them having a much longer shot at the Championship than maybe other clubs and boards would give them. So a good performance from them. That's what stood out to me. And Luton beat Sheffield Wednesday.
I was just going to say, just on a quick one on Burnley.
Yeah, go on.
Because
I didn't have much to say about Burnley, so I hope you've got something
interesting. Well, I mean, because it's interesting that the Sarmiento goal is another occasion of a quality player getting on the ball, cutting inside and finding the corner. The Brownhill goal is another example of someone from outside the box finding the corner. That's their 5th goal from outside the box already this season. And when you consider they've scored the most goals this season with 13, that's from an XG of 5.
Yeah.
So defensive numbers really good, but also we think back to the game against Cardiff where they scored 5 from under 1 XG, from not that many shots. It's quite funny that when you think back to Burnley winning the league, they relied quite a lot on Manuel Benson getting on the ball and smacking in the top corner from 20 yards. So,
which is why it's unlikely that Burnley fans will give a damn about their.
I'm not telling them to give a damn.
I know.
I'm not telling them to give a damn. All I'm saying is that it's quite strange that we have the team scoring the most goals in the league right now. I think they've created the 21st for big chances in the league. Like, they are not creating many chances for Lyle Foster to thrive off, and that is a strange little wrinkle about their play.
Yeah. Damn. That's what Sheffield Wednesday fans said when Deshaun Bernard was sent off handling the ball on the line.
Bernie.
Should have looked this up before we started recording.
I'll do it quickly.
Let's do it in real time.
Right.
What is the handball law when it comes to a player moving across to block a shot and blocking it with, like, the sort of very, very top bit of their arm, if not the shoulder bone?
So I have no idea, but I'm going to tell you.
Okay, cool, thanks.
I think it's a deliberate action. And therefore, I think if you move your whole body, including your arm, towards the ball in order to touch with your arm.
But there has to be physically a point that is considered your arm.
Yeah.
And therefore a handball and not. So if he... Is where it hit him, is that an arm?
Oh, right.
Is
yeah,
that
I think
a handball?
So. Yeah.
That's what I'm asking.
Oh, right.
Clearly it was a deliberate action.
Yeah.
But if you deliberately head it off the line, it's not a red
that's
card,
not a handball.
No,
deliberately kick it off the line, it'd be a disaster.
Celebrated.
Yeah.
Do you see where I'm coming from now?
Yeah, it didn't cross my mind when I saw it, I must say.
I'm looking at an image on the FA's website where pretty clearly...
It's just past nipple height, isn't it?
Pretty clearly... Well, it's like armpit, isn't it?
Well, yeah.
Or the sleeve is what it's often described as, where if it hits you on the sleeve of your shirt, up to basically your bicep or your armpit line, that's not a handball. And I think that hit him above that line.
Do you?
So I think that was a harsh red card. I don't think that was handball.
I reckon there's bicep in that, in where it hit him.
Interesting.
Although, as I said, I didn't notice it at the time, so I am relying on my memory from this morning.
I'm coming at this for some reason like a bitter Wednesday fan, and it's partly because I really feel like they deserve to win this football match. I think they'd been the better side for 75 minutes, and away at Luton, that's quite impressive. And Barry Bannon had scored his second sumptuous goal of the season. Goal. Why does he consistently do stuff that like no one else really does?
Because his ability to kick a football is just so good. Like, I was listening to...
You thought they'd all be good at that, though.
There was a good line. I was listening to the Colin Murray's pod with Ellis James about Wayne Rooney a few weeks ago. And Colin told a story about how Pat Nevin once said to him, where Colin was like, what's the difference between me and you? Like, I can play football, you're a professional footballer. And apparently Pat Nevin said, you kick a football, I kick a patch on that football. Ooh. And it feels like Barry Bannon kicks like a speck on that football, where his ball striking is so good that he can pinpoint exactly where he needs to kick it in order to do basically whatever he wants.
Yeah.
And that goal is a great example of that, where like you just see him coming onto it and you just know he's going to meet it so sweetly, and it's all in one action. Like, people raving about Haaland's finish for the first goal against Arsenal yesterday.
Yeah.
Bannon's a better one-stride finish than that.
Get some Bannon in your life.
Yeah.
But they lost. They lost. Carlton.
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh.
Carlton Morris having scored that penalty after Bernard's shoulder ball, and then Carlton Morris also smashing home after carnage in the box. Luton packing the box, putting the pressure on at home at 1-1 against 10 men and getting the win, which means back-to-back wins for Luton. They need to play better. I'm pretty clear about that. But you can't argue that they have helped themselves with a couple of victories in the last couple of weeks. They've got Argyle away on Friday night and then Oxford at home next midweek.
See you there.
Probably a good time to say we're going to be doing the first ever episode of what's going to be called Under the Lights. And it's going to be us doing Monday Pod style breakdown of midweek action. We've never done this before for a number of different reasons, but we want to provide the whole picture now. We want to be famously EFL until the earth explodes, and that involves covering the midweeks as well. We are, for now, this is going to be for paid subscribers of NTT20.com. So in order to get our midweek coverage, you will have to be a paid subscriber of NTT20.com. We have always said that the Monday Pod, the betting show, all the things that have always been free will continue to be free. But as we look to grow as a business and expand and grow the team further, we do need to make certain decisions like putting Under the Lights behind a paywall. So you will have to sign up to NTT20.com in order to benefit from that. We'll talk about it in further detail next Monday. QPR drew 1-1 with Millwall. Both goals were by kind of some of the early surprise performers of the Championship season. What more goals? What more? Goals.
Yeah.
One goal he scored here. And then it was Michael Frey showing how to save a life, equalising for QPR. A little through ball from Dembele. He was at the Frey, how to save a life.
I was just trying to work out who sang that.
The Frey.
I thought maybe someone called Michael I was trying to work that out.
The Frey.
Okay.
Nice assist from Dembele, matched with a finish from Frey. And you know what? Finish 1-1. I'd say Millwall were the stronger team there. 8 shots to QPR's 2 in the second half when the score was 1-1. Worth knowing, because Millwall's numbers are very, very good at the moment. And Preston drew 0 with Blackburn. A horrendous football match.
Bite.
But some quite fun red cards in it, and one that wasn't given. So Greenwood with a really stupid tackle at the end of the first half, red card. Beck with a silly moment rather than a stupid tackle, I would say, getting a red card. And then in the aftermath, Osmajic, nuzzle. Oh, we might actually be biting there.
I would say no nuzzle. Just chomp, I would say.
Yeah, not sent off. TBC as to...
Surely you're going to get a huge ban.
Yeah, possibly. So Blackburn still unbeaten, but not unbitten. Oh, it was a hell of a weekend in League One. League One.
Not many draws.
4-1. Leyton Orient at Stockport. George, who had won their last 7 league games at home and kept a clean sheet in 6 of them. That didn't happen this time round. Big result for Wellens and Leyton Orient.
Huge back-to-back results after a really difficult start to the season. I think to go have 2 away games at Reading and Stockport and pick up 6 points, it's probably like 4 points gained at least on what you'd probably expect from them, especially after their start to the season. But they were really good here. You know, both the goals from Galbraith early in the game were fully deserved, as Leyton Orient were by far the better side for the first 20 minutes. And as you would expect from there, Stockport came into it the second half, the back end of the first half. Challoner made loads of changes at half time, taking off Camps. Made 2 changes, taking off Camps and Norwood, 2 players who've been very, very good in the last couple of weeks. Norwood since he signed, and Camps all season. And it didn't necessarily work, albeit Oluwafe played a big part in the goal that they got back through Diamond, creating down the right-hand side a good finish from Diamond. But I thought Lewis Bate was possibly at fault for the third goal from Orient. He was kind of dragged out of position which made it a very simple pass through to Aji, who looked really lively in the second half here, putting that one away nicely and then creating the second goal for Sean Clare. So all in all, just a very, very good day at the office for Orient, who were clinical in terms of what they did going forward, and Stockport did have a few chances in the second half, but this was a proper game where whenever the game was tight, Orient were by far the better side and therefore fully deserving of their 3 points.
Louis Barry plays for Stockport.
Yes.
He was the EFC EFL Young Player of the Month for August, and I interviewed him to talk to him about it, and he's really great, Louis Barry, not as a footballer, although he is, as a person and as a interlocutor, someone to talk to. He's great. And we had a really fun chat, and I challenged him to score a very specific type of goal, and we agreed on his celebration if he ever does that, and I think that would be quite cool. So do go and watch that interview on our YouTube channel. Louis Barry, EFL Young Player of the Month for the second time, one of only 4 players to have won it twice. Jed Spence, Fabio Carvalho, Ayuba Sal. Wonder how he's doing out in Qatar.
Probably having a great time.
Yeah, miss him. Bolton beat Reading 5-2, and we spoke in some depth about Reading at the top of the show. So I'm going to focus on Bolton because this was significant. The sun has not shone on Bolton since their playoff final defeat, but it very much did here, both literally and figuratively. Their 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th shots all went in, which is just what you need when you're under pressure. One was a free kick, expertly dispatched by Sheehan. 2 penalties, dispatched by Dion Charles. He also scored within that to make it a first half hat-trick, a first half blitz, and I think the atmosphere was starting to flood back into the Reebok, or not the Reebok, as it is.
Tough sheet.
What I would say is, at 4-2, Big Kelvin hit the bar. And it would have been quite interesting to see how nervy things might have got for Bolton. At 4-3, instead, they extended it, 5-2 win. Reading ran out of steam. Can you blame them? Not really, as discussed at the top of the show. So from a Bolton point of view, what changed? Because Ian Evatt hasn't been changed or sacked. We talked last week about the fact that it felt like many Bolton fans had finally fully turned. Mm-hmm. But he has been supported by the owner. He didn't leave. But that's not to say there weren't changes between the Huddersfield game and this game. One of the first team coaches left, and he changed captain as well. Ricardo Santos, no armband. Played the game, gave away a pen, wasn't wearing the armband. That was George Thomason. So just a few ways that changes were made without sacking the manager, which is normally how changes get made. I thought that was interesting. And Evatt also went back to the sort of what's more of a 3-5-2 shape that they played last season compared to what's I would say has been more of a 3-4-3 shape. That means that Aaron Collins benched for this one with Adebayo and Charles, 2 more sort of fixed number 9s, and that seemed to work pretty well. They also brought in George Johnston for Farino, so the back line had a bit more balance with the left footer in it, and it worked. So let's see how they go from this point. They've got Arsenal in midweek, and then a trip to Crawley, and then a trip to Northampton. So it'll be quite a tough next 10 days for Evatt, but a massive win for them. And another win, George, for Birmingham City at Rotherham, 5 in a row now in the league.
Yeah, and this was basically a game that Birmingham won early on and then just coasted in the second half where very little happened. Interestingly, though, despite Birmingham taking the lead after 14 minutes, it was another game where, for the first 10 minutes, they were kind of on the ropes, and Rotherham created a couple of opportunities, and you could tell the fans there were like, here we go, we've got them here. And then just 2 moments of real quality meant that Birmingham were ahead, and then they coasted to victory after that. Iwata, who I don't think was known for his goal-scoring ability at Celtic, with another really sweet finish into the bottom left-hand corner. And then the defensive work for Stansfield's goal was absolutely horrendous. The positioning, I saw that Cameron Humphreys was taken off at half-time, which is understandable given that Stansfield should be the best player in this league, right? Mm-hmm. Certainly the most high-profile player in the league, playing for the best team in the league. And he was just standing in between the 2 centre-backs in acres of space.
Clues in the name. Standing on the field. Stansfield.
Just... oh, my God. And basically stuck up his hand, and Willem Willemsen was like, yeah, that's an easy ball. I can literally just clip over to you, and Stansfield ran onto it, and with a beautifully taken deft lob, beat the keeper to make it 2-0. It's the kind of goal that I think as a manager, and again, judging by the fact that Humphreys was taken off, Steve Evans is going to watch that thinking like, how have we made it that easy for this team to score against us? Like, if you're playing Birmingham, you want to make it as difficult as possible for them to score against you, knowing the qualities that they've had. And yet, you've got two quality players there in Williamson and Stansfield who you're going to have to make it harder for them. I was impressed by Stansfield in the whole game. It was interesting to note that Chris Davis, despite Alfie May's good start to the season, switched it up and played Lyndon Dykes up top through the middle and Stansfield as the 10, and it really worked. It meant that Stansfield had a lot more licence, I think, with Dykes occupying the physical centre-backs. It meant that he was always ghosting into space, even for the goal itself. For Iwata's goal, it kind of came from the ball played in Stansfield's feet in a block shot. My hunch is, and I wrote about it at the time for the long shot, the betting newsletter that we do, that this is probably going to be what we see for the most part. Like, I think it makes more sense for Stansfield to be playing off Dykes rather than trying to wedge May and Stansfield in together, but we'll see how that develops. I mean, it's a great option to have, and I have no doubt that May is gonna play some part this season. But this was another example, I think, of Birmingham. You know, my criticism of them in their first few games of the season was that we weren't really seeing them be light years ahead of their opposition, and they were having to rely on late goals in marginal games. I think when it's mattered against both Wrexham and against Rotherham in a week, they've been well clear.
Big result, surprise result at Huddersfield. They'd gone and beaten Bolton 4-0 last week. They followed it up by losing 3-1 at home to Northampton. Now, the pre-match odds suggested at around 3-1 on that Huddersfield had, in the bookmakers' eyes, around a 75% chance of winning this game. Instead, they were 3-0 down after an hour and didn't help themselves. What did you make of Mikael Helik's own goal with, last week, a lot of laughing at Bolton for the fourth goal that Huddersfield scored against them, with Bolton messing about with it at the back.
Fine.
And Huddersfield benefiting from that. Then they gave a goal to Northampton with Helik just passing it into the goal. Nichols kind of on his heels. The pass was a little firmer than you'd want and not that accurate, but equally, probably, if my goalkeeper had slightly better agility, I'd probably expect him still to get across and stop it. It was pretty embarrassing, and they followed that up by letting Fosu running behind, long ball forward from the goalkeeper. Great pass, you have to say, from Burge. Fosu picked it up, laid it off. McGeehan fired it in. And then Fosu ran clear 3-0 after an hour, megging the keeper. And I was reminded that last week I mentioned that Brady, when they lost to Wickham, he made the point that some of their players that had joined late in the window, namely Mbete, Shushane and Fosu, were still working their way up to match fitness, and that's why they weren't starting, and that they'd be better when they did. They all started, and they've won 3-1 at Huddersfield. So, kind of excited about that.
But yeah, maybe it was you.
Maybe it was John Brady being a genius. Karoma making it 3-1 and then missing a penalty with 10 minutes left, and that was that. So Northampton are 2 wins, 2 draws, 2 defeats to start the season, which I think is a decent start. I'm kind of interested to see what the next 6 games might bring, and quite a lot to be angry about. From a Huddersfield point of view, from embarrassing goals conceded to penalties saved to, they might say, a potential foul in the build-up to the third goal as well. But a poor day.
They're playing midweek
at the office.
There are 3 very sneaky midweek League One games coming up tomorrow night.
Cool.
Huddersfield hosting Blackpool, Leyton Orient hosting Peterborough, Wigan hosting Stevenage. So you blink and you'll miss them.
Peterborough beat Bristol Rovers 4-2, so they'll be heading into that one with confidence.
They will be, yeah. They, again, when this mattered, they were by far the better side in the first half. They won the game 3-2, not 4-2. You threw me there with the wrong scoreline. But Kwame Poku scored a nicely taken goal, followed up by Ricky J. Jones, showing some serious pace. Although I think it was Taylor, the centre back, who looked really quite slow for Bristol Rovers as he hopped onto a loose ball and managed to race clear and finish fairly comfortably. Before Malik Mothersill, who I think we're expecting big things from, but has yet to kind of really catch fire for Posh, scored with a nice finish at the near post in the second half. And it was a Peterborough display. Again, we talk about it with kind of all the new guard of attacking players stepping up, albeit Con Clark came off injured after 20 minutes and was replaced by by Ibi Odo, who was replaced by Mothersill, who scored, and Odo came on early in the second half, and it's impressive. One change and one kind of reason, I guess, possibly for some optimism about what has been a pretty poor couple of weeks for Bristol Rovers. Gatlin Odonka's introduction into the game in the second half for Promise Omashere changed the game a bit for them, where his physicality up top made a big impact. His aerial prowess, it was his knockdown from McCormick that led to the first goal, and then straight from kickoff he was up, did a really nice chest back into the midfield, ran off, and then was there to head a really nice flicked header, really well taken goal, to be fair to him, into the far corner. On loan from Oxford, had a good loan spell at Barnet last season. Someone who had a ridiculously good scoring record in youth teams, who has developed into a real unit, aged 19, with some question marks over his mobility, but no question marks over his ability. And I'm guessing now, for Gas fans, having seen that, the assumption is he'll come into the side on Saturday as they host Wickham, and they need a spark. Like, they need someone to do it, because right now Bristol Rovers look miles off it to me. And you know, with the quality they've got in their team, you'd hope they'll be okay. But right now they are performing like a team that will be in a relegation fight this season.
Yeah, Burton are in that conversation. They've not won yet this season. 6 games, 4 of them drawn, but 2 of them lost, including late on Saturday at home to Barnsley. Not a lot had happened in this game until Luca Connell fired in a low sort of laser of a free kick from about 30-35 yards that found the bottom corner. Burton, in response, not creating loads until the 88th minute. Nice cross from the left from Kalinauskas, headed in by Jack Cooper-Love. And then not seeing it out. A similar cross from the left, I think it was O'Keefe, onto the head of Stephen Humphreys, who joined Barnsley on deadline day. He's been building his fitness, half an hour off the bench last week and here, but making an impact immediately. I've never seen him jump so high. When I think of Stephen Humphreys, I think of dribbling and powerful shots. I don't think of like climbing above and kind of dunking on a Burton centre-back. But impressive win for Barnsley. That's 3 away wins already this season. It's brilliant how good they are away from home. For me, the story is that I'm getting worried about Burton's kind of intangibles. I don't think them conceding to lose is a great reflection of those intangibles, whether it's grit, determination, temperament, however you want to call it. Sort of both mental and physical strength are lacking a little bit at the moment. They haven't been very strong at defending their own box, and that was shown here. And you know, Mark Robinson is someone I've met quite a few times. He's actually one of my favourite people I've ever met from within the game of football. Mark Robinson. He is a brilliant guy to chat to. So it doesn't give me any pleasure, but I think it is part of our job to flag up that he hasn't won in his last 26 league games as a manager, straddling spells with Wimbledon, 20 games it was, and now 6 league games with Burton to start his career there. So the gauntlet is laid down for Burton to turn what have been a lot of draws so far into victories, and to just be a little bit stronger at the end of games, and turn tight games into wins rather than defeats, as was the case here. Mansfield, they beat Shrewsbury 2-1 from behind.
From behind, yeah. Shrewsbury took the lead after 2 minutes with Leo Considine.
Castledine.
With Leo Castledine.
Paddy Considine's son. That's amazing.
Weirdly, he is
son of an actress.
Son of an actress.
Yeah.
So maybe no. With Leo Castledine, capitalising on a massive error from Deji Oshalaja, as a cross came in, Oshalaja failed to deal with it, and Castledine was there to tap home. Castledine should have made it 2-0 in a spell where Shrews were just a better team in the first 25 minutes or so. Mansfield really struggled to get going. Second half was a different story, though, with Lee Gregory putting away a penalty to make it 2-1. And then just one of my favourite goals of the week because of its simplicity, where Keanu Bacchus, who came in the summer, picked up the ball deep in midfield, and rather, I would say, quite often in League One and League Two, when you get players in this position, they get rid fairly early or get it forward quite early. And Bacchus was so patient, kind of strode forward without, basically waiting to pick the lock, and played a brilliant through ball into Lewis's path, and Lewis finished really well. It was a weird goal where if you looked at it on a map, it's basically just two balls just rolled in a straight line directly forward, and yet that can still unpick a defence and beat a keeper. Football, eh?
Yeah.
But the scoring late on, Mansfield probably deserved on the balance of play for their second half performance. I think Shrews have improved a bit. I think we're seeing some signs, especially in some of those young players, such as Castleline, that have come in and have made a bit of an impact. But I think they're going to need to capitalise when they are the better side in games, because I think defensively they look quite a long way short, and teams are going to find it fairly routine to create against them. Yeah,
Blackpool beat Charlton 2-1 at the Valley. It's Nathan Jones's first home league defeat as Charlton manager. And it means that Blackpool's sort of hoodoo away from home the tide might start to turn, because they've not had a lot of fun on their travels recently. But Steve Bruce is showing, obviously, because he's an experienced quality manager, that management is easy, right? And what would they have advised him to do upon his appointment and the sacking of Neil Critchley and the end of his reign? Play 4 at the back, not 3 at the back. Play Rob Apter on the wing, and watch the team cook. Yeah, that's what's happened. 4 at the back, Apter on the wing. It's going pretty well. 2 wins to start his tenure. Also helps when the opposition players head the ball into the net for you. That's what Ghassan Ahadme did to put Blackpool 1 up, but they went 2-0 up very quickly.
They said when he scored he was going to score more, didn't they?
Yeah. Albie Morgan made it 2-0. This is a guy who started his career at Charlton, played 146 times for Charlton, but not a hint of a muted celebration, scoring at the Valley. Well done, son. That's what we like to see. And Luke Berry bundled one in on the 96th minute to make it 2-1. You'd normally go like that was just a consolation. They had 3 more shots after that, because there was, I think, 12 added
12
on.
minutes, yeah.
But Brucey's Blackpool saw it out for maximum points in his 2 games. Very impressive. There was also a win for Exeter against Stevenage. A good win, in fact. Set-piece goal hooked in by Ed Francis, who's showing some goal-scoring form. And Stevenage only really threatening from set-pieces. We kind of talked about this last week when they beat Barnsley. Impressive defensively, but not generating a lot in open play, and that was an issue for them here. Having gone behind, they didn't offer much of a threat. Exeter's best open play stuff had Cammy Doyle at the heart of it. He's a loanee from Brighton. He's already scored one brilliant free kick earlier in the season. In this game, nice bit of creative play slipping in McGuinness for a chance in the first half, and then also scored a lovely goal, showing good feet in a crowded area and smashing it into the roof of the net with his weaker right foot. So for Exeter, 6 games, 3 wins, 3 defeats, feast or famine points-wise. Kind of hard to put your finger on them exactly at this point. What about Wrexham? George, and their 2-1 win against Crawley.
Kind of different to how you'd imagine this looked, I would say, with Crawley having long spells in the game where they were the better side. Elliot Lee put Wrexham ahead 1-0 when Crawley made a decent start. Cleworth did very well to keep the ball in play after a set piece, and Lee was there to put it in the back of the net. But Crawley should have been back level before half time with Quaterna set through. He rounded Okonkwo, and then there was a covering defender and he just rushed it, and he hit it over the bar from kind of 12 yards out. But he made amends for that.
Quaterna's never quit.
They do not. And he made amends for that in the second half with a really well-taken goal to make it 1-1. And after that, Crawley looked possibly like the team more likely to score. They were creating more chances. They were happy in possession for the most part. But it went against them from a set piece, as is often the case with Wrexham. So good from set pieces, and also very good in open play, like they are as an attacking unit. So strong from both. And it was that man, Cleworth, who got the goal, who does seem to pop up with important goals at big moments. I think off the back of a bit of a humbling defeat against Birmingham, where I think going into that game, Wrexham fans, understandably, because I think certainly you and I sat down to watch that game thinking we're going to see here 2 of the best teams in League One. And it became very obvious during that 90 minutes that, and it's nothing to be ashamed of, Wrexham aren't at Birmingham's level yet. And they had a home game here, like having been knocked off their perch a little bit and, been humbled a little bit. How they reacted in a home game is going to be important. And I think there are 2 ways you can read into that, because they won the game, most importantly, but given how dominant they've been from a home perspective under Phil Parkinson the last couple of seasons, it was by nowhere near their their more dominant displays. So be interested to see how that develops. But the most important thing was getting the 3 points, and they did that effectively. Paul Mullin made his first start of the season as well to keep an eye on. Went close with a free kick. I would guess for Jack Marriott, who's someone who's had a lot of injury issues, part of it would have been managing his minutes, but they're certainly blessed at the moment with a lot of forward options.
Lincoln 0, Wigan 0 was a match that happened.
That was really a match that happened.
League 2, we had, and I'm loath to use the league table, but it's helpful for the purposes of this link. And maybe one day I might want to be a TV presenter. And I'm going to have to get good at links if that's the case. It was first v second.
You can say the same about your golf as well.
Oh, come on, man. Hate the links courses. Why is it so windy, mate?
Yeah. Everyone else who plays golf is desperate to go and play on the sea, and you're like, nope.
Heathland, please.
Yeah.
Beautiful trees.
Parkland.
Parkland. Or Heathland.
Indoors?
Nope. It was first v second in League 2 ahead of the weekend. It was Notts County against Gillingham. And someone tweeted, because it was 1-0 to Gillingham, I think it's worth saying the score. Someone tweeted, wondering if the next NTT20 pod is going to repeat the same Gillingham were lucky script they've used for the past 4 weeks. So let me just get up the auto cue for you, George, and off you go.
Were Gillingham lucky in this game is a great question, because it followed a pretty similar pattern to a lot of their games this season, where, unlike previous games, I wouldn't say that Notts County posed a particularly potent threat throughout the game. And I would actually say that on the balance of play, there was very little between these two sides, where Notts County dominated the ball. Gillingham were relatively happy to let them have it, and neither created many big chances. However,
sounds like a decent away performance to me.
For sure. However, there were a couple of occasions where, I'm not going to call them lucky, let's call them fortuitous for Gillingham, where we saw Cerula with a rebound 5 yards out from goal, just hit it straight against the woodwork, when I'm not going to say it would have been easier to score, but it would have been pretty easy to score. And then a defensive mix-up with a Gillingham player deflecting the ball that landed just over the top of the bar. And then a remarkable offside decision where, I'm not saying if it was right or wrong, but I've never seen an offside before where the scoring player, who in this case was Sam Austin, wheels off, and you can see him run past the linesman who doesn't have his flag up, and then the linesman flags a little bit later. And it does feel like an odd one, because you can see when the ball is played, he's basically ghosting into the box, and you'd think he would, but we can't see it from our angle. So all my point is with Gillingham, and no one from Gillingham has ever hurt me. I've had a couple of questions physically, emotionally, mentally.
Well, we spent the day with Mark Bonner last year.
I love him.
You and him had a blazing row, if I recall.
I'm literally friends with your manager. But there's going to be a point where these marginal things,
with statistics even more.
No, but it's not even stats though. It's just like that you've had a start to the season where there's like a force field around your goal, and eventually that's probably going to go the other way. But in terms of the performance itself, it was a brilliant ball. You have to say, from Hutton into Nevitt, and a really well taken goal. It was one of the better displays of the season. As I say, unlike against Chesterfield, unlike in other games where you've won them, this wasn't a case where Notts County were able to create loads of opportunities. And yeah, I think that Gillingham fans going home happy and hoping that I would say you're rubbish again, they'd be disappointed, albeit, quite soon, I think Gillingham are going to concede some goals.
I'm so invested in this continuing, and by this I mean like the force field thing that you've discussed. And because I always think there's a risk when we develop into these situations where there can be a bit of friction between a fan base and a couple of
who's frictioning
nerdy well, we've had loads of tweets, so I'd say there's some friction.
They're frictioning me.
They're frictioning you. Yeah,
I'm not frictioning them back.
Well, you kind of are a little bit. There's a certain defensiveness in your voice that I think just riles people up.
When I'm frictioned, I don't just let them friction me. I want to push back a bit and say, hold on.
So okay, there's friction involved. I'm not gonna dish out the weightings of it. What I am gonna say is that I want this to continue, by which I mean one of the biggest statistical outliers I've ever seen and it's the opposition conversion rate against Gillingham, where they have faced 98 shots this season. It's the third most in League Two. They have conceded 2 goals. So 2 goals from 98 shots, conversion rate of 2%. The teams around them, Newport have faced 129 shots, conceded 14. Harrogate, 123 shots, conceded 10. And then Bromley have faced 1 shot less than Gillingham, conceded 9 more goals. Cheltenham have faced 6 shots less than Gillingham, conceded 9 more goals. And Grimsby have faced 12 shots less than Gillingham, conceded 10 more goals. And Carlisle have faced 14 shots less than Gillingham and conceded 12 more goals. And essentially we're getting to the point where either the Gillingham goalkeeper is the best goalkeeper that League Two's ever seen, or Mark Bonner has legitimately made a sacrifice at an altar at some point, and he just knows how to bend life.
But so just on the bending life thing,
he can bend life.
I've looked into that, and it's not possible. On the second thing, which is the keepers, it's not even the keepers. It's like looking. Glenn Morris has played 4 of their games so far, and it's basically on line with the expected goals on target. It's more the opposition being unable. It's force field, being unable to hit the target, being able to kick the ball.
I mean, they have also got the best goals per shot on target faced. So the keepers are making the saves that are on target.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I'd like to see how quick are you? What the shots on target count is.
Whatever the case
There's
may
some friction
be,
between us now as well.
Whoever wants to, whatever it gets framed as bitterness or whatever, I guess how I like to come at all of our discussions is as if I'm talking to a neutral fan rather than a fan of the club. And I think for neutrals of League Two or EFL neutrals, this is a pretty interesting scenario we've got right here with Gills, and that's good. It's good for content. Crewe beat Harrogate 3-0, 4 wins in a row now for Crewe. The bell is ringing. Lee Bell was getting a bit of heat, as much heat as you can get when you've won 3 games in a row, for the games being really boring, and for Crewe basically boring their opposition into submission and then scoring late, and just not being very dynamic in the final third. But we saw some dynamism here against admittedly quite a poor Harrogate side who've really only turned it on once this season, and coincidence, it was when the cameras were there and when our friend Dan Story was sitting on the bench and writing a piece about them. They reverted to type here and lost 3-0, but it was great finishing from Hemmings and from Lancaster that had Crewe 2-0 up after half an hour. Dimitri had already hit the bar from a set-piece before then. Harrogate set-piece defending continuing to let them down. Great save made by Philip Marshall. Not for the first time this season. His loan is going really well, having been sort of much maligned at MK Dons last season in the 7 or 8 games that he played. And I think it's fair to point out, having kind of perpetuated the idea that had been quite dull to watch, that Crewe have, per Opta analyst, the second best XG against and the lowest XG per shot faced. So I guess I say that to say that fair play, Lee Bell, because it's not always easy to coach a dynamic attack, particularly with a new set of attacking players. But if you can't do that straight away, for whatever reason, make sure you've got a good foundation defensively, and that's what they have, and that is proven now. So more power to you, Lee Bell and Crewe. Good win 3-0 at Harrogate. Carlisle against Harrogate, rather, not at Harrogate. Swindon lost at home to Carlisle. This is Mike Williams' first game in charge of Carlisle. How did it look?
Mike Williamson. Yeah, it had no real Mike Williamson footprint, I wouldn't say, or fingerprint on it, where it wasn't the possession-heavy style that we would necessarily expect to see, and I think that's fair enough. I think it would be quite weird of Williamson to walk in and within a couple of days or 48 hours or so try and get Carlisle to completely change the way that they've been drilled to play. I'm sure we will see it in the coming weeks. But I mean, it was relatively new manager bouncy, I would say, where Swindon were able to create a fair bit and miss some good opportunities. But Carlisle were relatively clinical when it came to finishing them off themselves. So, yeah, I mean, I think with Carlisle now, it's a case of getting points on the board to move them away from the relegation zone where they were before this game. It's a case of, I guess, of Williamson learning a fair bit about his players. The first goal from Lavelle came from a set piece. The second from Armstrong looked like it had been saved onto the post, but just crept over the line. If you look at the shot locations, they were all pretty good from Carlisle. Swindon will feel that
absolutely mugged, was the quote from Richard on the squad.
I was going to say Swindon will feel like they probably deserved to be in front when they went behind. But
they had their keys and wallet, and then all of a sudden they didn't have their keys and wallet.
Yeah,
mugged.
Something like that. But I mean, yeah, fair enough. I'm not going to go that far.
Well, next up for Carlisle, at Brunton Park for the first time, Mike Williamson playing on that delicious Carlisle United pitch.
What a pitch.
Award-winning pitch.
I've always thought that was a great pitch.
You've always said that it's a great pitch as well, and it is literally award-winning. And if anyone listening doesn't know that Carlisle have the best pitch in League Two, one of the best in English football...
Go and read our YouTube comments.
Yeah, we did a reaction video to Mike Williamson moving from MK to Carlisle, and that's on our YouTube channel. You can watch our thoughts there. It's rare and therefore interesting to us when there's a movement between teams in League Two, and it creates a juicy narrative for the rest of the season. That's what we're all about.
I quite like this quote from Mike Williamson about the result. It was the perfect result. I said to the boys after that the ingredients they have shown in that game, the desire to put their bodies on the line, the attitude, the mentality, the heart, and the endeavour was brilliant. So what he's saying there is, lads, you've got all of the physicals and the mentals.
Yeah.
Now it's time for some technicals.
That reminds me a bit of the beginning of an off-menu podcast where Ed Gamble says, like, sprinkling the endeavour of endeavour and the hard work of grit and determination and making a key lime pie of winning.
Yeah.
And Barrow beat Newport 2-0, and I liked it. Newbie scoring, nice assist from Couhig, stealing in at the back post was Newbie's been due a goal and he got one. And then someone who's literally the opposite of being due a goal. He's got too much credit. If anything, he owes goals back to the bank. Theo Vassell, Barrow centre-back, has 3 goals already now this season. Barrow's 5th set-piece goal in 7 games, thumped home. They are making it look as easy as Arsenal make it look to score headers direct from corners. I think they might actually be using the same routine that Arsenal are using because they all look exactly the same. And this Barrow side are just remarkable at the moment. George, 2nd fewest goals conceded, best underlying defensive numbers. They were missing their...
Top of the league, mate. Do you know that?
Really?
Yeah.
The league table?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I've not looked.
No.
No Canavan here, no problem. Stoke stepped in and did well. I think the new boys, Ben Jackson and Couhig, the left back and the left winger, looking good down that side. They are top of the league, according to you. And they're off to Stamford Bridge on Tuesday. And I just think probably right this second, life couldn't get much better if you're a Barrow fan. I say this second because... Well, unless they go like ahead at Stamford Bridge, or in case they win at Stamford Bridge, but most likely they'll lose. And this moment of anticipation off the back of being top of the league will be as good as it gets for a while. So enjoy it. You have to say, Stephen Clements has made some start as Barrow manager, but some worrying signs for Newport for sure in the last few games. Yes, they are missing some senior defenders, McLaughlin and Clark in particular, Brennan as well, but they're looking really flimsy and it is quite concerning, I would say. Salford lost 2-0 at home to Walsall.
Yeah, this was a funny game where in the first half, you picked Walsall to win in the betting show by 1-0 or 2-0, which they did.
12-1.
The idea being that Walsall are such a good defensive side and Salford have been pretty poor from an attacking standpoint. And even though Salford struggled to create particularly good chances, watching the first half back, like they were the better side, I would say. Like we knew they would have more possession, but they certainly looked the more dangerous side. But in the second half, Walsall came out and completely turned that on their head and were fully deserving of their 3 points. Massive shout out to Nathan Lowe, who scored the first goal, and then a brilliant bit of play to assist Charlie Lakin for the second, where a ball that looked like it was destined for a throw in, and he kind of ran backwards and took the ball on his toe over his head. An unbelievable first touch under pressure and managed to recycle it to Lakin, who finished off. And that is, in my mind, 2 brilliant bits of recruitment in Lowe and Lakin. Lowe on loan from Stoke, Lakin, who spent last season at Sutton. Players who, I guess, weren't massively sought after in the summer for teams with an aspiration to get out of League Two. and have started the season incredibly well. I just think there's so much to like about Matt Sadler's Saddlers, where their defensive shape, even in a game like this against Salford, where Salford were able to get a lot of shots off, which we haven't been used to seeing. The reason they got shots off was because they had a lot of the ball in Walsall's half, and eventually when they couldn't find a way through, they shot. Like it wasn't necessarily because they were creating good goal scoring opportunities. And for whatever reason, Walsall are a side where, because of their quality out wide and Barrett and Gordon, because of the work that those players in midfield do, and especially Stark, who kind of knits it together with Laken's quality, with Jellis's energy alongside, and then two profiles of striker in Lowe and Matt that are completely different, one young and buzzy and one experienced who's done it before. They seem to be completely confident they're going to get chances within games despite not really ever having the ball. I think they are a proper high ceiling team because of how good they are out of possession and how good a defensive unit they are too. And I've seen some of the bookmakers now have them nearly second or third favourite for the title, which I think is right, but I still don't necessarily think is a belief shared by a lot of people that follow League Two. I think they are a proper side who are going to be in the mix-up for the title come the end of the season. Colchester
3, Tranmere 0. I mentioned the other day that Cole U had been finding more and more creative ways to not win games when they'd been the stronger side, and they put that right here with 3 good goals. Samson Tavide and Lyle Taylor playing up front together looked really good. Tavide setting up Taylor for the first goal, and Taylor scoring a similar goal for the second. Edwards with the assist. Tavide with a nice little dummy to drag a defender out of the way and put it on a plate for Taylor. And then Tavide scoring after racing clear in the second half. So really good performance and win. I think, having been pretty high on Cole U pre-season, I'm now sort of nodding when I'm looking at their team on paper. I'm seeing Goodliff at the back, who missed a few games through a head injury. I'm seeing Edwards on the left, who I think started only his third or fourth game, looking really dangerous. And Lyle Taylor, of course, up top. Him and Tavide seem like a good combination, more so than Ian Vian before he left and Tavide, as we saw on opening day, or maybe Hopper and one of the others. I like that a lot. So I feel like they could click into gear right now. One of my favourite stats at the moment is that Cole U have taken 44 shots on target this season, which is 7 more than any other team in the EFL. So even when they've not been winning games, they have been a threat, and I'm sure that will continue. But this is kind of big red flags for Tranmere as well. They've got a 2-win, 2-draw, 2-defeat record, which isn't terrible on paper, but they have failed to score in 4 of their 6 games. The style's really poor. They've got the worst XG in the league per Opta analyst. They're not taking many shots, and when they do, they're not taking high-quality shots. They don't have the individual brilliance to mitigate against that. So I'm a bit worried about Tranmere in possession at the moment. One stat that I saw on Opta analyst that kind of sums it up: 15.8 crosses per game, which I think is 4th or 5th most in League Two. Only 1.6 per game actually finding a target. So 10% of their crosses are being completed. That is an issue for them that needs to be fixed. And Grimsby beat Bromley 1-0.
Yeah, they did. Bromley will feel again frustrated. I feel like Bromley are a team at the moment who have come out of quite a few games where they haven't necessarily deserved to lose with defeats, finding life. It's funny, finding life in the EFL quite difficult, despite, I would say, the performances themselves not actually being particularly bad. The only goal in the game came from a penalty dispatched by Danny Rose. It was kind of a bit of a nothing challenge in the right channel that led to the penalty. But Bromley had opportunities to level that in the second half and were unable to take them before Kieran Green was sent off for a second yellow for an unbelievably stupid robbery tackle, given he was already on a yellow, albeit I guess with 5 minutes to go maybe he made the decision that actually taking the red card.
Smart. I'd say a smart decision.
It looks smart now.
Taking one for the team. Well, there has been how good a chance would it have been if he hadn't brought the player down? Okay.
It was on halfway. Jake Eastwood made some good saves for Town in goal. I feel like I say this every time Grimsby win, but I kind of feel like for David Artell, there is I think he's really, after a difficult start, I think he's really endeared himself to the Grimsby Town fans, where they now want him to do well because they like him. And they're like, it'd be really nice if you could just be good so that we can just be happy with how much we like you as a bloke. And so it feels like wins like this give them all a bit of impetus to be like, yes, we can get behind him now. So, because results haven't necessarily been amazing. But
that sounds lovely.
This was by no means vintage our tell ball. They weren't great in possession. They didn't create too much in open play, but the 3 points should give everybody a boost.
Yeah, Accrington 2, Port Vale 2 is one of those where I'm afraid I don't think this reflects that well on either team, in that Aki went 2-0 up in the first half and Vale were just not at it at all. One was a lovely goal, in fairness, from Sean Worley, who feels like the only Accrington player really that seems to consistently perform in an attacking sense. You get snatches from elsewhere, but there's not a lot of consistency outside of the 37-year-old Worley, who's a player that I just love. He set up the second as well for Love, but then Vale scored 2 goals in injury time. The second one was a hilarious scramble that included the most remarkably random little scooped pass from Connor Hall, their big centre-back. Received the ball in the box, just decided to roll his foot over it and then just scoop it into the middle, which I loved. It wasn't particularly good. It didn't go to it ended up bouncing through to a Vale player. It didn't go straight to a Vale player, but they managed to bundle it in. They've drawn 2-2. It means that Accrington have now conceded 6 goals in the last 15 minutes of games, scoring none in the same period. So a huge issue ending games for Accrington, which is why they have started the season so poorly and are one of not many teams left in the EFL without a win in the relegation zone after 7 games. George MK won, Donny won. Was a game with a couple of red cards for Clifton and Harrison. What I want to know is, who's the next MK Dons manager going to be?
Don't know. I mentioned in our YouTube reaction video that I thought Scott Lindsay might be linked. He's currently the odds-on favourite for the job. Whether or not that has anything to do with anything, we don't really know. But it'll be interesting to see who they go for. There don't seem to be that many rumours around at the moment. It wasn't a great display from MK. I think when you're at home against one of the favourites, if not the favourite for the title, and they get a man sent off after 10 minutes, you probably need to make sure that you make the most of that. And they looked for a time like they were going to, with Ellis Harrison scoring after half an hour, but then Ellis Harrison did a really stupid tackle where he just slid in with one of his feet just miles up in the air and he was sent off, and that enabled Anderson to score from a set piece to make it 1-1. So I think just yet more frustration at MK. Donny fans feel pretty happy they were able to get away with a point.
And Chesterfield and Cheltenham drew 1-1. Chesterfield finding ways to not win games where they're probably the better side. It was great speed from Arkell Jude Boyd, who ran onto a pump forward, got in front of the keeper, nipped it round him, and then finished. Chesterfield's goal having come from Dylan Markanday. A 1-1 draw there. And Bradford and Wimbledon drawing 0-0 was a match that happened. Dons hitting the post after a lovely move. Hippolyte hitting, both posts. Hit one post, rolled across the goal line, hit the other one. 4 clean sheets in a row for Wimbledon's very impressive. Unfortunately, some pretty bad news this morning, Monday morning. Flooding in the ground, which has really ruined areas of the pitch and means that their very exciting Carabao Cup fixture against Newcastle has had to be postponed. And there's right now, without any knowledge of how the clean-up operation is going to work and how long it will take, some concerns about their ability to host matches at Plough Lane in the next couple of weeks, so something to keep an eye on. And Fleetwood Morecambe are playing on a Monday night, so make sure you watch that if it's on and you've already listened to the pod. Thank you very much for listening. Join us again on Thursday for the betting show. Make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. Not the Top 20 is what you should search to find it. We're putting loads of stuff on there, and it is the video versions of these podcasts, which hopefully are quite fun to watch back. But also, and if you watch those, you can see the ridiculous sort of half turtleneck that I'm wearing.
Unbelievable.
Really misjudged it. And
September the 23rd.
Last thing to say is we're putting loads of stuff on there, and we're really committed to making some excellent, for YouTube-specific content that won't ever be on any of the pod feeds. So do make sure you subscribe, please, and watch all the videos and like them. Thank you very much, and go well.